My 20th graduation from a fairly well-respected school, at least in this state, is in 2 weeks. We are only allowed 4 tickets per student, but it's not the school being frugal. The graduation ceremony is held in the university's main auditorium, which simply doesn't hold that many people. My parents refused to pay for my college and claimed that I was on my own. They then boasted about my graduation and sent hateful emails attacking my aunt and uncle, who helped me. It all began in high school during my junior year when my parents called me into the living room for a family meeting. It wasn't about anything I'd done wrong, which was a relief, but rather about money. They sat me down on the sofa, and my dad, Frank, cleared his throat and launched into a tirade. I bought 3 tickets and invited my Aunt Donna, Uncle Kevin, and Cousin Jeremy, but I didn't invite my parents, Esther and Frank. My mother, Esther, added that I was turning 18 soon, becoming a legal adult, and that I needed to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet. I remember just sitting there nodding slowly. I wasn't shocked. Not really. I think a part of me had always known that they were getting older and needed to concentrate on their retirement. They also said that they had their lives to live and their future to plan, and that future didn't include paying for my college education. To put it mildly, my parents were frugal with me. They weren't poor at all. They lived comfortably, but they were always cautious with money, especially when it came to me. Asking for anything, even necessities, felt like a bargain. I would only get new clothes if I had clearly outgrown my old ones, and even then, I would get a lecture about how expensive everything was and how I should be more thankful for what I had. On a school trip, I had to practically beg for them. The college announcement was not unexpected. Rather, it was a confirmation that I had a backup plan. A few months prior, I had spoken to my Uncle Kevin, my dad's older brother, and I had always been closer to him and his family than to my parents. My parents, especially when I was younger, were constantly busy and had a very active social life, so they dropped me off at Uncle. I practically grew up at Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna's house, sometimes for the entire weekend. Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna treated me like their daughter, and my cousin Jeremy, who was 4 years older than me, was like the big brother I never had. I went to Uncle Kevin not expecting him to pay for everything, and I was going to ask him to cosign a student loan, but before I could even say anything, he said, "Don't, they're both doctors, Jeremy being a surgeon and she being a pediatrician, so they're financially secure. Don't worry about college. Donna and I will take care of it. You just focus on your studies." Aunt Donna agreed right away, saying that I was family and that they were happy to help. I offered several times to pay them back after I graduated and got a job, but they refused. Tuition bills, and now that graduation is quickly approaching, I got the tickets and sent them to my aunt and uncle. I didn't even consider my parents because I genuinely think they wouldn't give a damn. Since I started college, our relationship had gotten even more strained, and even when I went home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we hardly spoke. They would be out having parties or going out with their friends, so I would usually end up driving over to Jeremy, and I would try to plan our visits to my uncle's house, which was about an hour away, so that we could all spend time together. It felt normal, like family. Then, last week, my mom called in the afternoon, starting with a small talk about how classes were going and whether you were excited about graduation. It felt forced and unnatural. Then my dad got on the line, cleared his throat like he used to do in high school, and asked, "So had you?" I felt a knot in my stomach and blurted out, "I already invited Uncle Kevin, Aunt Donna, and Jeremy." There was a pause, and then my mom's voice became strained and sharp. "You didn't invite your parents?" I tried to explain that there were only a few tickets available and that the auditorium was small, but my dad cut me off. He began talking about my voice is getting louder every time I tell people about your graduation. "I've been boasting to all of my friends about how proud I am that you're graduating from a good college and that your mother and I will be embarrassed if I don't attend." That's when I lost it. All the years of feeling like an afterthought, like a burden, and like I wasn't as important as their social life came flooding out. "You haven't even asked. When I asked you about college 4 years ago, I yelled, 'You're always too busy with your friends spending money on fancy dinners and vacations.' You responded, 'You did the bare minimum, and you were the ones who decided to pay for college.' My mom began yelling back, 'We raised you, put a roof over your head, put clothes on your back, and invested so much time and money in you, and this is how you repay us with gratitude.' I reminded them verbatim of that conversation in the living room, telling them that Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna were my true family and that they had supported me. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking, and blocked their numbers right away because I needed to talk to someone. I called Uncle Kevin, and I told him everything. He listened to me patiently without interjecting, and when I was done, I hung up. Then, 2 days later, I got an email from my dad. It was a lengthy email full of excuses and backhanded apologies. He claimed they hadn't spent much money on me when I was growing up because they wanted me to be humble and appreciative. He said in his calm, reassuring voice, "You did what you had to do. Don't doubt yourself for a second, kid. You're part of our family, and we're proud of you." He said they were devastated that I had misunderstood their behavior and that I had chosen my uncle's family over them. He pleaded with me to unblock them and send them tickets to the graduation, promising that they would not post anything on social media and that they only wanted a chance to mend our relationship. He even had the gall to grumble that I had invited Jeremy, my cousin, but not them, whom I knew. It still hurt AITA that they didn't invite my parents to my graduation ceremony, even though they knew it was all a ploy to save face. Edit. Some people have asked for more background. One question was why my parents were so focused on boasting about my graduation. My college is fairly prestigious. It's regularly ranked among the state's top business schools, and it has a very active and influential alumni. Another question was why I kept in touch with my parents for so long, although they were emotionally distant. It's complicated. I didn't have anywhere else to live during the school year, so my uncle would have welcomed me with open arms, but I felt awkward asking because I didn't want to be a burden. I suppose graduating from there is a status symbol in their social circle. I admit that there was a tiny part of me that still hoped that things would change and that they would somehow become the parents I had always wanted. Update 1. Alright, I've decided that I won't be responding to my parents' emails and that I will keep them blocked. I read the email multiple times in an attempt to analyze it objectively, and the more I read it, the more I realize they hadn't expressed regret for anything. Instead, they provided a litany of excuses and explanations for their actions, attempting to make me feel bad and cause me to doubt my judgment. Then came the surprise when my Aunt Donna and Uncle Kevin called me yesterday to inform me that they had changed their flights and would be arriving 2 days early. They stated that they wanted to spend some time with me before when the graduation chaos started. I was ecstatic to see them in person because it made all the difference. Last night, the three of us went out to dinner, and I finally felt comfortable enough to speak with my uncle directly about the entire situation with my parents. I told him about their email, in which they claimed they were only trying to impress their friends. Uncle Kevin simply shook his head and sighed, saying, "That sounds exactly like your father. He's always," as he continued, "he told me stories about my dad's childhood. It seems that even as a teenager, he was preoccupied with social status and made an effort to make friends with the wealthiest and most popular kids, although their family was, in Uncle Kevin's words, firmly middle class and not particularly ostentatious. My dad and mom met in college at a fraternity party and bonded over their shared ambition to climb the Uncle Kevin, then became serious, telling me that many of my dad's current friends, the people he's trying so hard to impress, are not exactly role models. He claimed to have heard rumors of extramarital affairs, dubious business practices, and other things, but they all kept up the appearance of being happy, respectable families. He said it was completely pitiful that my dad at his age, still my parents' priorities were completely skewed. They cared more about appearances than genuine connection. Any lingering guilt I'd been feeling just vanished. The graduation is in 3 days, and I'm trying not to let the thought of these people's opinions ruin his relationship with his daughter. Hearing all of that from my uncle, someone I trust implicitly, was incredibly validating. Update 2. Graduation day finally arrived, and the ceremony itself was magical. Everything I'd hoped for. I walked across that stage, shook Jack's hand, received my diploma, and felt this overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Although I'm hoping my parents will just stay away and realize they've lost, a part of me is preparing for some sort of public scene, some attempt to embarrass me or manipulate the situation. After the ceremony, we took the required pictures of me and my cap and gown with my Aunt Donna, Uncle Kevin, and Jeremy. We were all laughing and giddy with relief. Jeremy and Uncle Kevin arrived that morning just in time for the ceremony after staying up late to finish a work project. I could see them beaming with pride and cheering louder than anyone else. Excitement thereafter, we left the auditorium and headed to a nice Italian restaurant nearby that Uncle Kevin had reserved weeks in advance for a celebratory lunch. That's when my phone started buzzing frantically. I was getting notifications from Facebook and Instagram, as well as text messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Uncle Kevin's phone also started buzzing, followed by Aunt Donna's and then Jeremy's. My parents had gone on social media. I couldn't view the posts directly because I had blocked them, but my relatives began sending us screenshots. It was terrible. They claimed that I had been demanding that they pay for my college tuition because I was envious that my Aunt Donna and uncle had taken me away from them. They had posted this lengthy, rambling, extremely vicious tirade on several platforms, accusing me of being a spoiled, ungrateful daughter. The worst part, the part that made my stomach turn and my blood boil, was what they said about my aunt and uncle's miscarriage. They said that my aunt and uncle were jealous and bitter because Kevin had paid for Jeremy's education, and that they wanted to raise me to be independent and humble. They also claimed that I had run crying to my uncle, who had then used the situation to poison me against my parents. It was a cruel, twisted, disgusting lie. My Aunt Donna indeed had a miscarriage. It happened a few years after Jeremy was born. They said that my aunt and uncle were projecting their grief and longing onto me, treating me like the daughter they'd never had. They even went so far as to suggest that the miscarriage was some sort of divine retribution by suggesting that my aunt and uncle weren't worthy of having another child. It was unfathomable to watch my parents use the tragedy as a pretext to attack my aunt and uncle in an attempt to make me feel bad. They didn't know the baby's gender a few months before I was born, but my aunt always said she had a feeling it would have been a girl. When I was born, they were ecstatic. I stood on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, shaking with anger and disbelief, wanting to my Uncle Kevin put his hand on my arm and said, "Don't give them the satisfaction. They want a reaction. They want to drag you into the mud with them. Don't let them." He said he would handle it and that he would contact his lawyer to look into legal options because everyone in the family knew what my dad was like and no one would take the post. I wanted to unblock my parents to expose them for the terrible people they were, but he stopped me. They sent us screenshots out of shock and disgust, not because they believed a word of it. We went inside the restaurant, and I tried to forget about it so that I could celebrate my success. It was hard, but my aunt, uncle, and Jeremy did their best to divert my attention. They made toasts, told me funny stories, and kept the conversation light and happy while subtly reminding me that I was loved and supported. It's been a little over 2 weeks since the graduation and the social media conflagration, and life has somewhat calmed down. I've been fully absorbed in the job hunt, sending out resumes, writing cover letters, and attending interviews. It's been a stressful process, but it's a welcome diversion from the family drama I'm experiencing. I don't know if my parents ever took the posts down, but I don't care. I haven't checked, and I won't update 3. Staying with my aunt and uncle has been a lifesaver. We eat dinner together most evenings, watch movies on the weekends, and just exist together in this cozy, supportive way. It feels like what a family should be. I discovered indirectly through a conversation between my Aunt Donna and one of my cousins that my Uncle Kevin did get in touch with my dad after the death of my parents. Social media posts my uncle, who has a friend who is a lawyer who specializes in defamation cases, had a letter written threatening legal action if my dad didn't immediately remove all the posts and issue a public apology. It appears that my dad tried to argue and bluster at first, but when he realized my uncle was serious, he recanted. The posts vanished without an apology. Naturally, I didn't anticipate one. You would think that would be the end of it, that my parents would finally realize they'd gone too far and that they'd irreparably damaged the bridge. But you'd be wrong. A few days ago, I got another email. Naturally, I was on guard because, following the graduation incident, I'd become extremely cautious about verifying sender addresses before opening anything. This one was from a new email account that I didn't recognize, and the subject line was just, "We need to talk, Mom and Dad." My first impulse was to erase it, block the sender, and act as though nothing had happened. But curiosity overcame me, and I told myself that I only wanted to see what they could say after everything that had happened. I opened the email. It was shorter than the last one, but it was just as manipulative. They began by expressing their deep disappointment in me, then they changed tactics, saying they'd been talking to a family counselor, which I seriously doubted, and that the counselor had suggested they'd try to reach out to me one last time to offer an olive branch. They accused me of being disrespectful and ungrateful, and they reiterated their claim that my Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna weren't acting in my best interests. They said they were willing to forgive me for lying in a moment of weakness. I didn't immediately block the email address because I told myself I was just keeping my options open and gathering information. This was a foolish mistake because 2 days later, another email from the same address arrived. This time, it was different. Transgressions if I would agree to meet with them in person to discuss our issues. They even suggested a specific date and time. This one was disgusting. The subject line read, "Disappointed in you, Mom and Dad." I hesitated. However, my morbid curiosity once more prevailed and I opened it. It began with the standard charges that I was being disrespectful and ungrateful, claiming that my uncle and aunt had brainwashed me. However, it took a sinister and unsettling turn when they claimed that my uncle's threat of legal action was evidence that he was concealing something. I'm quoting them when they say the only reason they lost their baby was because they weren't the right kind of people to have a girl. God made your aunt have that miscarriage because he knew they weren't fit to be parents. They then repeat the horrifying lie about my aunt's miscarriage, telling me to get up and come home before it's too late. This time, I didn't hesitate. I slammed my laptop shut and blocked. I haven't told my Uncle Kevin or Aunt Donna about this latest email because I know how much it would hurt them. They've been so considerate, and I would rather not burden them with my parents' toxic vitriol. I'm keeping it to myself for now, but it's eating at me. I feel like I need to do something, but I'm not sure what. Update 4: it's been a while. Email address: then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I cried. The biggest news I've had in a few months is that I got a job. It's an entry-level position, so it's not exactly my dream job, but it's in my field, and the work is interesting enough. The people are surprisingly nice, and my direct supervisor, a young woman in her late 20s, has been really helpful and supportive. I also moved out of my Uncle Kevin's house, which was a big step, and I'd been feeling a little guilty about how long I was staying even though I claimed I wasn't. So I located a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood about a 15-minute drive from my uncle and aunt's house. The first few nights were weird because I was used to my uncle's house noises, but I'm getting used to it. I acquired some inexpensive furniture from a second-hand store, put some posters on the walls, and began to make it feel like home. I even adopted a dirty little tabby cat, who has been a wonderful companion and a furry little commotion. I still see my Aunt Donna and Uncle Kevin frequently, and I occasionally go over for dinner. As for my parents' silence, I haven't heard from them since that last hateful email, and I've blocked them on all social media, email, and phone numbers. I've even thought about changing my phone number to make sure I've heard from the family grapevine. My cousin Jeremy keeps me informed, much to my aunt's criticism that I guess some things never change. They're still going to their fancy dinner parties, taking meticulous photos on Instagram, and acting like the ideal happy family. I've also started going to a therapist at Uncle Kevin's suggestion because he saw that I was still having problems even after getting the job and moving out. He gently suggested that speaking with a professional could help me process. I was first apprehensive about everything that had happened because I've always been a rather private person and didn't readily express my thoughts. But I believed my uncle and knew he was right. I'm now concentrating on creating my own life, my work, and my fuzzy little companion cat. I'm grateful to Reddit for all of the things you have done for me.